Mistress replaced. Pregnant wife. At dinner then collapsed when she saw the will. From the outside, the Thompsons' life appeared picture-perfect, a thriving family business, a lavish home, and a baby on the way. Yet behind the gilded walls, rumors whispered of deceit manipulation and a dark rivalry simmering beneath polite smiles. When the entire family gathered for a grand dinner intended to celebrate the future heir, nothing went according to plan. A furious confrontation ensued. Long-hidden secrets burst to the surface, and an unexpected guest threatened to tear everything apart. In the final moments, a single piece of paper, a shockingly revealing will, sent everyone spiraling as one woman collapsed in disbelief. This is the story of that night. It all began in the heart of Somerville, a peaceful suburb just outside the bustling city centre. The Thompson family home sat on a large tree-lined street, known for its impeccably manicured lawns and timeless architecture. Michael Thompson, the head of the household, had inherited the property from his late father, George Thompson, a man revered by neighbours and business associates alike for his generosity and business acumen. Indeed, the house itself seemed to be a monument to the Thompson legacy, a sprawling mansion filled with polished marble floors, sumptuous velvet drapes, and golden-framed family portraits stretching back 3 generations. Rebecca Thompson, Michael's beloved wife, was known for her gentle nature and philanthropic spirit. She had once been a social worker, dedicating her early career to helping homeless youth. Even after marrying into wealth, Rebecca's heart remained humble, though she adapted gracefully to the demands of high society. Their marriage, rumored to be the perfect union of love and mutual respect, had garnered admiration and envy in equal measure. From hosting charity galas to volunteering at local shelters, Rebecca's every action seemed aimed at bettering the community. The news of Rebecca's pregnancy spread like wildfire through Somerville. The city's upper crust eagerly awaited the arrival of the next Thompson heir. Michael was beyond elated. He had yearned for children for years, and each prenatal appointment brought new waves of excitement. Rebecca, too, glowed with the promise of motherhood. This sense of joy, however, belied the cracks slowly forming beneath the surface. Michael had inherited not only his father's estate, but also the responsibilities of running Thompson Enterprises, a company with branches in real estate tech investments and a small philanthropic foundation. Pressure weighed on him every hour of the day, from board meetings that stretched into the night to charity committees expecting him to step into his father's philanthropic shoes. Amid this whirlwind of obligations, Michael found it challenging to keep up with the demands of a busy family business and the emotional needs of a pregnant wife. The cracks began as small misunderstandings, missed dinner appointments, cancelled weekend getaways, long hours at the office. Rebecca's gentle concern that Michael was pushing himself too hard was met with polite dismissal. Yet no one, not even Rebecca, suspected that something more insidious might be brewing behind those office doors. No one guessed that a whisper of affection, a shoulder of solace offered when Michael was at his most vulnerable, would transform a trusted employee into something much more dangerous. This was the calm before the storm, a hush before lightning struck unwinding secrets that would change everything the Thompsons believed about marriage, family, and loyalty. Before Michael had taken over Thompson Enterprises, he was known around Somerville as a young man of incredible promise, articulate, ambitious, and earnest. With a finance degree from a prestigious Ivy League school, he stepped into the family business with big dreams, determined to modernize it while honoring his father's storied legacy. In those early days, the company was small enough that he frequently met employees in the corridors and cafeteria. That was where he first encountered Patricia Moretti, a marketing specialist who had just joined the team. Patricia stood out. Her confident stride, impeccable suits and warm smile made it impossible not to notice her. She and Michael bonded over shared interests, both enjoyed tennis and had a taste for the same Ethiopian coffee brand. She shared her vision for the future of marketing strategies, while he admired her quick wit and fearlessness in pitching bold ideas. The relationship initially remained strictly professional. Michael was happily married to Rebecca by this point, and Patricia was fully aware of it. Their conversations were casual, quick coffee breaks, brainstorming sessions, occasional after-work dinners with larger groups. But as Michael's responsibilities grew heavier, so did the demands on his time and energy. He found himself confiding in Patricia about boardroom skirmishes, expansions that fell through, and new philanthropic projects he had trouble balancing. Patricia listened with an empathy that blurred professional boundaries. She told him stories of her own struggles, coming from a family with nothing clawing her way, through scholarships building a career in a male-dominated environment. A friendship blossomed, or so Michael believed. But friendships in such high-stakes environments are rarely innocent. Patricia was ambitious. Seeing Michael vulnerable, she found subtle ways to insert herself deeper into his life. Soon she was the first person he texted at the start of a crisis, and the last person he said goodnight to after a stressful day. Rebecca, oblivious to the growing emotional bond, thought Michael merely stayed late at the office because of deadlines and expansions. Whispers in the corridors of Thompson Enterprises began. Some employees thought Michael and Patricia might be stepping beyond professional bounds. A handful of them kept their suspicions quiet, fearful of crossing the boss. Others laughed it off as gossip. After all, from their vantage point, Michael adored Rebecca. The rumor felt improbable, yet beneath the swirl of speculation lines were indeed blurring. And all it took was one vulnerable night, when Michael felt overwhelmed by the board's decision to pull funding from a philanthropic project dear to his heart for him to find solace in Patricia's arms. One momentary lapse in judgment, as Michael would later describe it, became the seed of betrayal. A seed that would soon blossom into something monstrous. Michael was racked with guilt immediately after that first fateful night with Patricia. His every interaction with Rebecca became tinged with a new tension. He noticed details he had never focused on, before her slight waddle as her pregnancy advanced the dark circles under her eyes, if she woke up too early, the cautious hope in her smile whenever he showed up on time for a doctor's appointment. He hated himself for what he had done. Guilt, however, can warp the best of intentions. Instead of confessing, Michael clammed up, burying himself in his work. Patricia, for her part, grew bolder. She insisted their moment together had been an expression of something real and deep. She texted him at all hours, enticing him with compliments and the promise of escaping the relentless demands of his life. At first, Michael resisted her advances, but each new corporate struggle, each personal failing pushed him into her orbit again. Slowly, Patricia's hold on him tightened, fueled by her own hidden ambition. She recognized her unique position. Michael was set to inherit millions upon millions, not just from the existing business, but also from real estate holdings and historical investments rumored to be worth a fortune once they matured. If Patricia could plant herself firmly in Michael's future, there would be no limit to her comfort or influence. The gossip at Thompson Enterprises grew louder, to the point that Michael's trusted advisor, Darren Moretti, coincidentally, Patricia's estranged cousin, began hearing rumors. Darren had a complicated relationship with Patricia. They shared the same last name, but the family had never been close. Suspicious that his cousin was up to something underhanded, Darren confronted Michael discreetly one evening, hinting he had overheard stories of an inappropriate relationship. Michael cornered, denied everything with a force that almost convinced Darren. Still, Darren's intuitive alarm bells rang. Meanwhile, Rebecca started to sense the distance. Michael was kinder than ever, bringing home lavish gifts, ordering her favorite desserts, insisting she take rest whenever possible. It felt overcompensatory. She told her best friend, Caroline Addison, that she was concerned about Michael's mental health. Caroline advised her not to worry, attributing the change to stress. But Rebecca's instincts warned her that something deeper was amiss. With each passing day, the tension in the Thompson household thickened. As the baby's due date crept closer, Rebecca yearned for more connection, more understanding. Michael, overwhelmed by guilt and confusion, began dreading coming home to face her earnest eyes. Patricia seized the moments in between, weaving her influence further into Michael's life. The stage was set for a family conflict that would shake Somerville. Unknown to all, a new spark of betrayal was about to ignite the powder keg of secrets, culminating in a single dinner that would change their fates forever. The final threads holding Michael's double life together started to unravel the day Patricia walked into a Thompson family charity function held at the prestigious Somerville Opera House. Rebecca naturally stood at Michael's side, her pregnancy evident in the glow of her face and the gentle curve of her dress. They had come to promote a youth education initiative fulfilling the philanthropic traditions of the Thompson name. Patricia arrived uninvited, sporting a shimmering gown that rivaled even the best-dressed donors. Her brazen appearance raised eyebrows. The hush of disapproval spread through the hall as some recognized her from the offices. Darren Moretti, in attendance to represent the financial side of the company, immediately spotted Patricia and tensed with dread. Rebecca, gracious and unsuspecting, greeted Patricia politely. "You work with Michael, don't you, Patricia, right?" she asked with genuine warmth. Patricia's dark red lips curled into a smile. "That's right, Mrs. Thompson. I do quite a bit of marketing for Thompson Enterprises." The air around them felt charged. Michael tried to remain composed, but sweat beaded along his hairline. While guests mingled, Patricia hovered close to Michael, whispering comments about the philanthropic program's synergy with the marketing department. To onlookers, it seemed purely professional. To Michael, her presence was suffocating. He feared that at any moment Patricia might slip up and reveal their affair. Instead, she simply stepped closer, her arm occasionally brushing against his, her laughter just a bit too familiar. Rebecca caught a fleeting glimpse of discomfort in Michael's eyes, but she dismissed it as stress or fatigue. Later in the evening, after the official program concluded, Darren cornered Michael in a backstage corridor. "Is there something I need to know?" he demanded. The older cousin had always been protective of the Thompson legacy, and he suspected Patricia's motivations might be purely opportunistic. Michael said nothing coherent, just fumbled through half-hearted excuses. "She's just here to represent marketing. She's ambitious. She's trouble," Darren warned flatly. But Michael, too afraid to face the consequences, brushed him off. By the event's end, Patricia's daring move had achieved its goal. She had introduced herself to donors, shaken hands with the city's elite, and most importantly, planted seeds of speculation in the minds of those who witnessed the too familiar dynamic between her and Michael. On the ride back home, Rebecca was silent, pressing her hand protectively over her pregnant belly, as if sensing an external threat. Michael stared out the window, torn between the fear of losing Rebecca and the fear that Patricia might expose everything if he tried to cut ties. In that silence, the stage was set for the next act of betrayal, Because Patricia, emboldened by her debut into the family's social sphere, began to plot how to replace Rebecca entirely, starting with an infamous dinner that would go down in Somerville's history as the night everything changed. For a few weeks following the charity event, life trudged on uneasily. Michael drowned himself in office tasks, attempting to avoid Patricia in both professional and private spheres. He believed that if he starved their connection, she might lose interest and move on to someone else. Yet the more he tried to distance himself, the more Patricia found cunning ways to appear at every critical juncture: a board meeting with key investors, a team lunch, a last-minute strategy session. Rebecca, for her part, felt the strain in Michael's voice, noticed the gloom in his eyes. Concerned, she scheduled a romantic evening at home, hoping to rekindle their warmth before the baby arrived. She lit candles, prepared his favorite meal, a gourmet roast chicken with rosemary potatoes, and played their wedding song softly in the background. Michael arrived 2 hours late, and upon seeing her elaborate gesture, wore an expression of deep remorse. "I'm sorry," he whispered, gathering her into a tight embrace. Tears glistened in Rebecca's eyes as she rested her head against his shoulder, unsure whether to ask the questions swirling in her mind. The moment almost felt tender, like a fleeting reminder of what they once had. Yet the unspoken tension remained. In the meantime, Darren stepped up his own investigation. Though he held only a minor stake in Thompson Enterprises, he had enough influence to keep an eye on Patricia's activities. He uncovered suspicious emails, after-hours meeting schedules that seemed to coincide with Michael's late nights, and travel receipts that hinted at shared hotel bookings. Darren confided his suspicions to Caroline Addison, Rebecca's close friend, hoping she would warn Rebecca without making it a company scandal. But Caroline hesitated. She couldn't fathom hurting Rebecca by delivering such devastating news, especially not while she was pregnant. So the secrets continued to fester. Patricia, realizing that Michael was becoming more distant, devised a plan to force his hand. She coerced a junior colleague into letting her see the invitation list for an upcoming Thompson family dinner, one organized by Michael's mother, Linda Thompson, in celebration of Rebecca's pregnancy. The dinner was to be a private affair, strictly family and closest friends. Patricia's name, of course, was nowhere near the guest list. She confronted Michael in his office, cornering him with the knowledge that she was, in her words, the most important person in your life right now, whether you admit it or not. She threatened to reveal everything if he did not bring her as his companion to that dinner. The tension in Michael's eyes turned into panic. Torn between protecting Rebecca and shielding himself from Patricia's wrath, he found himself making choices he never imagined he would face. With the baby's due date just weeks away, the dinner loomed like a final test. Little did anyone know it would be an event that would expose every lie, every betrayal, and set the stage for a revelation that would shatter all illusions of stability and security. The night of the Thompson family dinner arrived like a thunderclap in slow motion. Linda Thompson had spared no expense in organizing the event. A private chef was flown in from New York. The long oak dining table was adorned with bouquets of fresh white lilies, and soft classical music drifted through the mansion's elegant foyer. Rebecca wore a flowing pale blue maternity dress that accentuated her round belly. Her usually radiant face was marred by a hint of worry. She tried to shake off the feeling. This was supposed to be a night of celebration, a gathering of those closest to the family to toast the approaching birth of the next Thompson heir. Guests began arriving at 7 o'clock sharp. First, Darren Moretti, looking solemn but polished in a crisp navy suit. He greeted Rebecca warmly and inquired after her health. She flashed a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Next came Caroline Addison, Rebecca's longtime friend, who brought a huge bouquet of pink and yellow tulips. "For the mother-to-be," she said, pressing them into Rebecca's arms. "You look stunning, Becky." She lowered her voice. "Are you okay?" Caroline squeezed Rebecca's hand gently. "I'm just a bit tired," Rebecca lied. She was too proud and too anxious to voice her suspicions. At precisely 7:30, a hush fell in the foyer. Through the massive double doors stepped Patricia Moretti, clad in a figure-hugging crimson dress that seemed downright scandalous for such a refined family gathering. On her arm was Michael, his face ashen. A collective gasp rippled among the guests, although they tried to hide it with forced smiles and murmured greetings. Patricia feigned pleasantness, saying hello to Darren with an airy wave, as though they were the best of cousins. Linda Thompson frowned, glancing at Rebecca, who stood frozen for a moment before regaining composure, determined not to make a scene. Rebecca forced her lips into a courteous smile and greeted Patricia. "I didn't realize you'd be joining us." Michael cleared his throat awkwardly. "Patricia had some urgent reports for me about our new marketing campaign." He lied. "She's just dropping them off and then—" But his voice trailed off, uncertain how to finish his fabricated story. Patricia smoothly inserted, "I wouldn't miss celebrating the future heir of Thompson Enterprises for the world." She placed a delicate hand on Rebecca's belly, an audacious gesture that made Rebecca flinch. Servers began circulating trays of champagne and sparkling cider for the pregnant mother. The atmosphere soured instantly. Soft classical music no longer seemed soothing. It felt more like an eerie soundtrack to a slow-building confrontation. Linda led everyone into the lavish dining room, where name cards indicated each person's seat. Rebecca was, of course, seated next to Michael. Patricia was surprisingly placed on the opposite end, next to Darren, who stared daggers at her as she settled in. Caroline sat beside Rebecca, hoping to lend moral support. Dinner was served an exquisite 3-course meal, featuring truffle soup, pan-seared salmon on a bed of wild rice, and chocolate soufflé for dessert. But no one relished the feast. Patricia seemed intent on controlling the conversation. She peppered remarks with hints of her closeness to Michael. Michael and I found the perfect demographic approach for the new brand. And Michael texted me so late last night. We were discussing crucial numbers for the investor proposal. Each comment was a subtle jab aimed at Rebecca, who sat quietly, one hand resting protectively over her unborn child. Across the table, Linda's eyes narrowed. She might not have known the specifics, but she sensed the impropriety. Meanwhile, Darren seemed ready to explode. He could no longer contain his revulsion. So Patricia, he began setting down his fork with deliberate control. It must be nice to have so much one-on-one time with the CEO. His tone dripped with insinuation, and the table grew silent. Patricia merely smiled sweetly. Michael attempted to divert the conversation. "Rebecca and I are thrilled about the baby. Mum, we really appreciate you organizing this dinner." Patricia cut him off, leaning forward. "Oh, absolutely. New beginnings are always so exciting, especially when one has the right partner in place to handle the future." She let the word partner linger. At that moment, Caroline placed a reassuring hand on Rebecca's arm. The pregnant woman's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but she managed to smile. "Yes, we're very excited," she said, her voice more resolute than one might expect. "And we're lucky to have a wonderful family and loyal friends standing by us." Patricia's expression darkened, as though she recognized the steel beneath Rebecca's polite exterior. The meal dragged on with forced civility until dessert arrived. No one touched the chocolate souffle. An uncomfortable hush settled over the table, broken intermittently by Linda's half-hearted attempts at small talk. Then, as the final dish was cleared, Linda stood. She had planned a short toast, a tradition in the Thompson family. She raised her crystal glass. To Michael and Rebecca and their unborn child, who carries with them the hopes and dreams of us all. May this child be born into a family of love, integrity, and unity. Before Linda could lower her glass, Patricia rose abruptly. I'd like to propose a toast as well. The room fell silent, every pair of eyes fixed on her. With her left hand, Patricia grasped her own champagne flute. With her right, she reached toward Michael in a brazen display. To the future of Thompson Enterprises, which Michael and I have worked tirelessly to expand. May we continue to build a legacy that outshines even George Thompson's. Because it's not just about tradition, she said, her gaze locking onto Rebecca. It's about new blood. An audible gasp rippled through the guests. Caroline's jaw dropped. Darren glared. Linda looked as if she might faint. Rebecca, feeling each word like a dagger, stood quietly. Drawing in a shaky breath, she forced herself to speak. I think she began, her voice quivering slightly. This evening has run its course. But Patricia wasn't finished. She reached into her handbag and pulled out a small folder, brandishing it like a trophy. And speaking of new blood, she announced, there's something I believe belongs to the rightful Thompson heir. Something Michael wanted me to bring tonight. Michael's eyes went wide. He realized with horror that Patricia had brought the very last thing he wanted revealed here, the newly drafted will. The tension in the dining room skyrocketed the instant Patricia flashed the folder. Linda's breathing grew shallow. Darren's fists clenched beneath the table, and Caroline placed both hands protectively on Rebecca's shoulders. As for Michael, every color drained from his face. Rebecca managed to steady herself. What is this? She asked, her voice more composed than she felt. Patricia's lips curled in triumph. Oh, just a little insurance policy Michael has been working on. Isn't that right, darling? She shot a saccharine smile at Michael. You were going to tell everyone, eventually. In truth, Michael had consulted with the family's legal team, recently updating the will to reflect the future child. However, Patricia must have used her newfound closeness and perhaps a bit of office espionage to sneak a peek at the documents. Michael had intended to finalize them discreetly, ensuring that his child would be well provided for in the event of any tragedy. He never planned for Patricia to weaponize the paperwork at a family gathering. Panic seized him. Patricia. That's private. She laughed, a brittle sound echoing off the ornate walls. Why would you need to keep something so crucial from your wife, your mother, your entire family? Rebecca pressed a hand to her stomach. She felt the baby shift, as though reacting to the turmoil around them. Michael, she demanded, turning toward him. Explain. Now. The entire table held its collective breath. Darren stood prepared to intervene if things escalated. Even Linda rose halfway from her seat, trembling. Michael inhaled deeply, trying to gather his shattered composure. I updated my will, he admitted, glancing anxiously at Rebecca. With the baby coming, I wanted to ensure our child's future. It's standard practice for anyone in my position. I didn't want to worry you before it was finalized. Patricia let out a theatrical sigh. But there's more to it than that, isn't there? She brandished a specific page. As I recall, you left certain instructions about guardianship and finances under certain conditions. She paused, letting the suspense thicken. including what would happen if for some unfortunate reason you and Rebecca were no longer married." At these words, an audible murmur spread around the table. Rebecca's gaze turned thunderous. The subtext was clear. Patricia was implying that Michael anticipated a scenario in which Rebecca might not be in the picture. Linda placed a hand on her chest, eyes wide. "Michael, is that true?" Her voice quivered with disbelief. "Are you anticipating a divorce from your pregnant wife?" Michael shook his head vigorously. "No, of course not." He glared at Patricia, anger igniting in his eyes. "Why are you doing this?" "You know that document is strictly for worst-case scenarios. It's a standard clause," Patricia laughed, cutting him off. "Standard indeed, for a man with a mistress." A hush fell. The words drifted like poison through the air. The secret Michael had desperately tried to keep was now out in the open in the most humiliating way possible. Rebecca's face went pale, and she staggered slightly. Caroline rushed to steady her. Darren advanced toward Patricia, rage flickering behind his eyes. "You have no right," Darren began, but Patricia shot him a look of utter contempt. "I have every right," she said, her chin lifting. "Michael and I have been together for months, working tirelessly, building a future I deserve after all I've sacrificed." Tears glistened in Rebecca's eyes. "Michael," she whispered, pain shredding her voice. "Is this true? Are you with her?" The confrontation demanded an answer. Michael's shoulders slumped, and he gave a slow, pained nod. "It was a mistake," he said hoarsely, looking at Rebecca. "I never meant for it to go this far." Rebecca tore her gaze away, her world collapsing around her. The unborn child she had cherished was now the sole anchor amid a storm of betrayal. How long she managed. Michael swallowed hard. It happened. Just once at first, he admitted. But then, he couldn't finish the sentence. The sound of Rebecca's sob cut through the silence, and Linda stepped forward, eyes blazing. "I can't believe this," she spat. "Michael Thompson, how could you disgrace our family like this? Especially with a baby on the way." Patricia, seeing her moment of triumph, advanced to Rebecca's side. "He's been torn between us, Rebecca," she said softly in a mocking tone of sympathy. "I think it's best we settle this openly." Caroline glowered at Patricia. "Settle what exactly? Is it money you're after? Is that why you're flashing the will around?" A twisted grin appeared on Patricia's face. "Money is part of it, sure. But more than that, it's recognition. I've helped Michael expand the marketing division. I've been the one navigating investor relations while his pregnant wife was too occupied with baby showers." That remark finally made Darren snap. He lunged forward, grabbing Patricia's arm and yanking the folder away. "You manipulative leech," he hissed. "Rebecca was never an obstacle. You just saw an opportunity. And you used Michael's moment of weakness to worm your way in." Michael, despite his anger at Patricia, still tried to defuse the situation. "Darren, stop!" he shouted, pulling Darren back. "Violence isn't going to fix this." But Patricia merely smoothed her dress, unaffected by Darren's anger. "Yes, violence won't fix a thing," she said, her voice calm, almost triumphant. "But the truth can set us all free, can't it?" Rebecca, her hands shaking, reached out for the folder that Darren had seized. The room seemed to spin as she flicked through the pages. Indeed, there were clauses about guardianship for the baby distribution of shares instructions in the event that she and Michael divorced. All standard, but now overshadowed by the reality that her husband had been planning these contingencies with another woman whispering in his ear. She raised her head, tears staining her cheeks, but a newly forged determination in her eyes. "Get out," she said quietly, staring straight at Patricia. Everyone fell silent, stunned by the quiet steel in Rebecca's voice. Patricia laughed almost dismissively. "Why should I? I have every right to be here. Michael asked me." "I don't care what Michael asked," Rebecca interrupted, her voice strengthening. "This is my home, my baby's home, and you are not welcome here." She turned to Michael, her gaze cold. "And if you don't tell her to leave, I swear I will never speak to you again." A wave of tension rippled between Michael and Patricia, as though an entire unspoken war was waged in one glance. In that moment, Michael made a choice that might have come too late, but one he believed would salvage something of his life. He walked over to Patricia, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "Patricia," he said, his voice trembling, "it's time for you to go." Patricia's face contorted. For a moment she looked genuinely hurt, but the mask of bravado returned in an instant. "Fine," she said, snatching up her clutch. "I'll leave now. But I won't be gone for long. You owe me, Michael, and this won't be the last the Thompson family hears of Patricia Moretti." She spun on her heel and marched out, her crimson dress disappearing into the dark hallway. The echo of her high heels against the marble floor resonated long after she vanished. Meanwhile, Rebecca stood stoically, tears glimmering on her cheeks, heartbreak and anger coursing through her veins. Michael reached for her, but she recoiled. "Don't," she whispered, pressing a palm to her belly. "I can't even look at you right now." Darren and Caroline stepped to Rebecca's side, guiding her to a chair. Linda dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. No one spoke, the once celebratory dinner unraveling into a nightmarish fiasco. And yet the revelations were far from over, because within that same folder, Patricia brandished, lay not just the standard will, but a shocking codicil one Patricia hadn't realized existed in her quest to secure her own place. A clause that would later bring the entire fiasco to its knees. Hours later, long after the guests had left, a somber hush lay over the Thompson mansion. The only ones who remained were Rebecca, Michael, Darren, Caroline, and Linda. They gathered in the drawing room, the remnants of the evening's disaster swirling in their minds. Rebecca, physically and emotionally drained, clutched her baby bump protectively. Michael hovered at a distance, eyes brimming with remorse. Darren kept pacing the floor occasionally, shooting a glare at Michael. Caroline sat beside Rebecca, quietly rubbing her back in support. Linda stood by the fireplace, her posture rigid, battling conflicting feelings of anger and compassion for her son. "I want answers," Rebecca finally said, breaking the tense silence. "I've read most of what Patricia brought tonight, but I have a feeling there's more to this." Michael nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. He sank onto a velvet armchair and ran a hand through his hair. "Dad's original will was fairly straightforward," he began. "But after he passed, I discovered a note from him. He said there might be additional documents or codicils hidden in the family archives. Dad was always paranoid about corporate takeovers, extortion, blackmail." Linda interjected softly. "Your father was a meticulous man. He believed in having contingency plans for every possibility." Michael sighed. "Yes, exactly. So when Rebecca got pregnant, I reviewed everything to ensure our child would be protected. That's when the lawyers said they found a sealed envelope from my father labeled 'open' in the event of extraordinary marital complication. I laughed it off at first, but then After everything that's happened, especially with Patricia, I decided to open it. The room fell eerily quiet. Michael continued. Inside was a codicil that Dad had apparently written years ago, but never officially registered. It outlines that if any Thompson heir, myself or my future children, should face a serious threat to the family legacy due to an external party trying to claim marital rights or financial benefits under suspicious circumstances, the estate trustees have the power to withhold all shares and assets until a thorough investigation is completed. Essentially, the codicil can freeze the entire estate's distributions. Darren stopped pacing. Wait. That means if Patricia tries to claim some right, like if she's pregnant or if she coerces you into divorcing Rebecca to gain financial leverage, she could be cut off entirely. Michael nodded. Yes, that's what it means. Patricia wouldn't gain anything. Nor would I if the trustees activated that clause. It was Dad's way of protecting the family fortune from gold diggers or blackmail schemes. Rebecca's eyes went wide, a glimmer of relief intertwined with the heartbreak. She hadn't considered the possibility that Patricia might be trying to position herself to claim part of the Thompson wealth. But now it seemed painfully obvious. Does she know about this codicil, she asked. Michael shook his head. I don't think so. She grabbed the updated will from my safe drawer at the office, but the codicil was in a separate sealed envelope. It wasn't attached to the main document. Unless she meticulously read every single page of that folder, she might have missed it. And I doubt she'd have understood the old legal language. Caroline spoke up, voice trembling with anger. Then that means we have a way to fight back if she tries anything. She can't simply waltz in and demand a stake. Your father's protective measure is still in place. A fragile sense of hope settled over the group, but the tension was far from resolved. Rebecca looked pointedly at Michael. You should have told me about the updated will, about your father's codicil, about everything, really. Michael met her gaze, shame clouding his features. I know. I was trying to handle it all on my own. I was afraid of adding stress to your pregnancy, but that was wrong. I see that now. Linda came closer to Rebecca. My dear, you and the baby come first. Always, she said, her voice thick with regret. I never imagined Michael would stray like this, especially not with someone like Patricia. I'm so sorry. Tears welled up in Rebecca's eyes. She believed Linda meant every word, yet the sting of betrayal lodged deep. What happens next? She murmured. Darren answered grimly. Next, we need to be prepared for Patricia's next move. She won't sit back quietly. She'll either try to blackmail Michael or manipulate her way into the family again. We need to notify the estate trustees that we want to activate your father's protective measure the moment Patricia attempts any legal claim. Caroline nodded in agreement. Rebecca, it's also time you took a stand. You deserve better than this entire fiasco. Rebecca breathed in shakily, placing a protective hand on her belly. I need time to think, she said, glancing at Michael. The disappointment in her eyes was unbearable for him. I don't want to make any rash decisions about our marriage, about the baby's future. But I also can't pretend this betrayal didn't happen. Michael's voice cracked. I'll give you all the space you need. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it. An uneasy quiet fell, broken only by the ticking of the antique clock in the corner of the drawing room. They all sensed the storm that was about to ensue. Patricia, fueled by ambition and spurned by Michael's rejection, would not go down without a fight. But this time the Thompson family wouldn't be caught off guard. Together, they decided to finalize the necessary paperwork. They would loop in the estate lawyers, ensuring that the codicil was legally binding and recognized immediately. If Patricia attempted to stake a claim, the entire fortune, except for what was needed for day-to-day operations, could be locked down until further investigation. Rebecca retired to her bedroom, exhaustion overwhelming her. She asked Caroline to stay the night, not wanting to face the swirling emotions alone. Darren and Linda quietly said their goodnights, leaving Michael in the drawing room. He sat there for hours, replaying the nightmare of the evening in his head. His father's words from the note haunted him. Protect the family from external threats, but also from your own mistakes. At that moment, Michael realized that George Thompson had foreseen everything. Perhaps not Patricia specifically, but the dark inevitabilities of greed, betrayal, and heartbreak. As dawn crept over the horizon, Michael closed his eyes and made a vow to himself. He would do whatever it took to keep Rebecca and his unborn child safe from the fallout of his choices. But even as he formed that resolution, Patricia was out there fueled by rage and cunning, plotting her next move. And when she learned the full scope of the will, when she saw the codicil that threatened her carefully laid plans, she would not go quietly. Days turned into weeks. Patricia's absence from the office was conspicuous, but it was hardly a relief. Everyone at Thompson Enterprises suspected she was preparing for a decisive strike. Despite her numerous missed calls, Michael refused to engage. He instructed his assistant to filter out any personal communication from Patricia. Behind the scenes, the estate lawyers moved swiftly to legally bind George Thompson's codicil to the updated will, ready to freeze all assets at the first sign of Patricia's meddling. Rebecca, meanwhile, found herself in a tumult of emotions. She moved out of the master bedroom and into a guest suite, needing distance from Michael. Caroline stayed in the mansion for another week, providing emotional support as the baby's due date loomed. For Rebecca, the heartbreak was excruciating, but she drew strength from the child she carried. She would read baby books, watch educational videos, and indulge in soft lullabies, imagining a peaceful future for her and her baby, whatever shape that future might take. Michael tried in his own clumsy way to show remorse. Fresh flowers delivered to the guest suite every morning, offers to drive Rebecca to her prenatal checkups, heartfelt letters of apology. Some days, Rebecca let him accompany her to doctor visits. Other days, she slammed the door in his face, tears wetting her cheeks. The pendulum of her emotions swung wildly between hope for reconciliation and anger over his betrayal. One late afternoon, a startling development forced the family's hand. Darren received a tip from an old friend in the legal sphere that Patricia was attempting to file a paternity suit. She hadn't confirmed her pregnancy. No one knew if she truly was or if it was a bluff. But if she filed such a claim, it would raise a storm of public scrutiny and could potentially entangle the Thompson family in a media scandal. That same evening, Patricia herself arrived at the Thompson mansion without warning. She stepped out of a sleek black car, her stilettos clicking ominously against the driveway. The security staff recognized her, but also remembered the chaos she caused at the dinner. Still, Michael had never explicitly banned her from the property. With a smirk, Patricia bypassed their hesitant protests and made her way to the door. Michael confronted her in the foyer, tension crackling in the air. Darren and Linda appeared behind him, while Caroline stood protectively near the staircase, ready to call for Rebecca if necessary. Patricia wasted no time. "I've scheduled an appointment with my lawyers," she announced. "We'll be moving forward to determine if I'm carrying Michael's child, and if so, what that means for his estate." A malicious gleam lit her eyes. If you think your father's archaic codicil can stop me, think again. The court of public opinion might find it distasteful that a pregnant woman, if I am indeed pregnant, is being denied her rightful share. Michael felt a wave of nausea. Patricia, I will not be bullied. If you're pregnant, we'll handle this responsibly. But if this is just another manipulation... Patricia raised an eyebrow. Do you want to risk it? You'd be gambling your reputation. Your family's name, all on the assumption that I'm lying. Are you willing to do that? Linda stepped forward, surprising everyone. She spoke in a calm, measured tone that commanded attention. My husband foresaw the possibility of external threats. You should know that if this codicil is invoked, every cent of the Thompson estate can be frozen, pending a thorough legal and private investigation. That means no money for you, no settlement, no hush, pay nothing. You'd be taking on a family that has deep resources and a loyal network. Are you really prepared for that fight? Patricia's bravado faltered momentarily, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. Darren seized the moment. We also have reason to believe you manipulated corporate funds. There are certain marketing expenses we can't account for. If that's proven, you won't just be fighting a civil lawsuit, you'll be facing criminal charges. The threat of legal consequences caused Patricia's smirk to fade. She had come prepared for a battle over paternity and inheritance, but this was a multi-pronged offensive. She opened and closed her mouth, searching for a cutting retort. After several agonizing seconds, she shrugged nonchalantly. Then I suppose we'll have to see what the tests say, and what my lawyers can find. But don't expect me to go down without a fight. With that, she turned and walked out, her high heels echoing her retreat. Once she was gone, Michael leaned against the wall, feeling as though he had aged decades in a matter of minutes. Darren's jaw remained clenched, Linda's eyes stormy, and Caroline rushed to comfort them. They all knew the next few weeks would be crucial. If Patricia wasn't pregnant, her paternity suit was an empty threat. If she was, however, the matter became infinitely more complex. The tension in the house reached a crescendo that night. Rebecca finally came downstairs, having overheard fragments of the confrontation from the guest suite. She looked at Michael with heartbreak in her eyes. Is she? She couldn't complete the sentence. Michael approached cautiously. She's claiming so. We don't know if it's true. We're prepared to do a paternity test. My lawyers will handle it. I swear, Becky, I'll do right by you and our baby, no matter what happens. Rebecca's eyes shone with tears. She set her hand gently on her belly. And if her child is yours, then what? We raise half-siblings under this roof. We share custody with a woman who despises me. A painful silence fell. Michael had no immediate answer because the question was laced with complexities. One step at a time, he finally whispered, First we confirm the truth, then we deal with it. In the days that followed, Michael's lawyers reached out to Patricia for scheduling a paternity test. She stalled, citing scheduling conflicts and alleged travel commitments which only fueled suspicion that she might be bluffing. Meanwhile, Thompson Enterprises quietly let her go, citing breach of contract and misappropriation of funds that the internal audit had uncovered. Rebecca's labor pains started earlier than expected, about 2 weeks before her due date. In the throes of contractions, all thoughts of Patricia evaporated. Michael rushed her to Somerville General Hospital with Caroline and Linda in tow. The next 24 hours were a blur of pain, worry, and fierce hope. When at last their child, a boy, was born, Rebecca held him to her chest, tears of joy mingling with tears of heartbreak for the broken fairy tale of her marriage. Michael stood by her hospital bed, eyes flooded with gratitude and regret. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice trembling. "He's beautiful." He wasn't sure if he was thanking Rebecca or God or fate. For the first time in weeks, Rebecca let Michael cradle her hand. She nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. In that fleeting moment, the world held only love for their newborn son. Outside the hospital room, the swirling storm of Patricia's threats and legal battles waited. But within those four walls, hope sparked anew, forging a tiny bond in the face of heartbreak. It was then that Caroline, who had stepped out to grab some coffee, returned with an urgent look on her face. She'd just received a text message from Darren. The paternity suit had mysteriously been dropped, and Patricia had disappeared from Somerville altogether. Some said she'd moved to another state, others whispered she'd hopped a flight overseas. Rebecca closed her eyes, exhaling a long breath. Whether it was a lie from the start, or whether Patricia had found her own motives for vanishing the immediate threat, was gone. Yet the emotional scars lingered, a reminder of how close greed and betrayal had come to devastating them forever. In the weeks and months that followed, Michael dedicated himself to repairing the damage both at Thompson Enterprises and within his family. It would take time, perhaps a lifetime, to rebuild the trust he had shattered. But the baby named George, after Michael's father, gave them a reason to try. And so on a quiet afternoon, as Rebecca sat in the nursery rocking George to sleep, she caught sight of the will that had caused so much strife. She smiled ruefully at the memory of Patricia collapsing in shock when she realized she could not simply seize the Thompson empire. The codicil had stood as a final testament to George Thompson's wisdom, protecting the family from any external threat, even if that threat wore the guise of a lover. Rebecca reached down and brushed her fingers across her son's cheek. The future remained uncertain, but she felt the gentle stirring of hope. Life would go on with or without the perfect illusions of the past, and perhaps in time the Thompson family, now bound by cautionary tales and renewed devotion, would emerge stronger than ever. Betrayal, greed, and heartbreak nearly tore the Thompsons apart, but they also led to revelations, renewed purpose, and a chance for redemption. In the end, the love for a newborn child reminded them all of what truly matters. Though scars remain, the darkest nights often birth the brightest dawns, and for Michael and Rebecca, the future holds promise as they navigate life's uncertainties with caution and hope. Thank you for joining us on this emotional roller coaster. If you found this story gripping, if it kept you at the edge of your seat, please show your support. Like this video, share it with friends who love a good drama, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating tales. Your support fuels our passion for storytelling, and together we can unveil even more mesmerizing narratives in the days to come.